And we should be live just any moment now. Setting up. I think it's a tiny bit delayed, so I think we're good. Yeah. All right, we're good. Okay, so hello. Good to see everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is the meeting of the Standards Working Group of the OpenJS Foundation Cross Project Council, attended by anybody in the project community who happens to be interested in web standards like we are, because they're fun. We start with any announcements. Are there any announcements? Anybody do anything fun, cool, super jazzy you want to share? Well, okay.
Not this week.
Okay, well, Brian, I think you should chat about the standards in 2 minutes thing, because I think Laurie's publishing something today.
Well, you hosted the last meeting, so you should do that.
Okay, well, for just this is super fun and cool. The TC39 Educators Outreach Group has been calling a group of folks together on a pretty regular basis, and they're starting to produce these little documents that we're calling Standards in 2 minutes on a Twitter handle. I think it's Standards in 2 minutes or something. But we've got like 3 or 4 pieces of content out that relate to new features. And it's actually kind of starting to get some traction in terms of like the group has really got a lot of good content that it's working on. And so your participation or retweeting or interest in any of that is warmly welcome, and it certainly would be a nice little adjacency and collaboration between like our project communities here too. So anyway, just thought.
Very much. And there also was, as we mentioned last time during the breakout session at TPAC, there was interest in taking that idea and applying it in other contexts like MDN as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic idea with 2-minute standards is like there's an overwhelming amount of content flying at you all the time, and you want somebody to give you the elevator pitch more than a tweet, but less than, competing for 15 minutes or more chunks of your attention. So we tried to scope that to like 500 words or less, or a 2-minute video or less, or like a webcomic. So I think that's really cool and interesting idea. Well, the one piece of feedback that I have gotten on a number of posts is that it actually takes 3 minutes.
Well, you got to start with some minutes. Yeah, groovy. Okay, so I guess barring no other announcements or anything like that, then we can jump into our first issue, which is issue number 24, TC53 participation. I haven't heard back from, this is the matter of getting our community signed up officially to collaborate on the TC53. And I sent an email to Robin and Mike Dolan about this, signing the paperwork that we need to just officially join. We are ECMA members, but because it's a royalty-free task group or royalty-free committee, there's an additional form to sign. And I haven't heard back from them. So I'm just gonna do a quick action item to myself to poke Mike and Robin about that. But I really don't have anything else unless anybody wants to talk about TC53. I do think next week, or no, maybe it's tomorrow. I think there is a TC53 teleconference call tomorrow If anybody wants to attend that, let me know, and I'm sure we can get you the dial-in information. Any takers? Okay. All right. Then moving on. I know everybody just really wants to attend more meetings. And they're like, yes, I can't wait to join another teleconference call. Issue number 23, to start accepting nominations for active members. We did discuss this a bit last time, just to sort of use the official kind of, or the CPC process for adding new members to the group. And I think from the last meeting, the action item was we actually need to do this as folks who are participating. We need to start just making these pull requests, because yeah, we thought we closed this out. No, I'm not sure what we did. Huh, okay, maybe we didn't. Maybe I'm jumping ahead. Oh, no, I'm not. We did. We merged this in. So yeah, we merged this process in by PR number 22. So now meaning every one of us on this call needs to open a PR to add ourselves to the membership roster. Is that y'all's interpretation of this as well from last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that seems right.
Cool, thank you, Richard.
Where is that roster?
So the same way we have it on the README of the CPC, I think the idea was to do the membership roster in a similar form on the README in this repository.
I think, is there like tooling that reads the README or something? Because the README, it seems like an unfortunate place to put a like changing list of people. There's other packages in the foundation and a node that like other repos that do this, that put it in the README, but it's always seemed to me to be a strange place to put it.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think the idea was in part to adopt fairly similar procedure in this group to the CPC to make it more to make sure that like there won't be any problem for the formal charter of this group when that happens.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can just do it for now, but it'd be nice to pursue, I think, cleaning that up for everything in the future.
I'm going to capture that as like a side note here. Side note, where should this list live? Okay. Okay, so then, you know, I may just go ahead and like tag every one of us in this, in the open issue to say, you know, hey, let's, especially those of us who've been, you know, pretty regularly attending this meeting, just to poke and say, let's do a PR. Let's do a PR to add you. Other thoughts on this particular item? Okie doke. Moving down to number 14, which is define and document onboarding process for the representative. I believe Sindel actually, nope, I guess maybe he did. Yeah, Sindel had PR number 21, which was merged in on a proposal for standards representatives. So this issue may be closable. So if y'all want to take a second and just take a look at this, I'm going to pop it in the chat. It's PR number 21, and then issue number what issue did I just say? Yeah. Take a look at that and just confirm or deny my inclination to say that this issue can be closed. So I guess it can't, because this is about onboarding and the other is about the, like, what the individual should be doing. So I think we need a PR for a sample onboarding process. Thoughts? I'm just going to take notes. Okay. Well, I don't want to invent more things for us to not talk about, so I'll move on to number 6. Standards related travel budget. We did talk about this last time. And we do have an open pull request for the calendar of events. We talked about just throwing out, a figure for like a straw person figure for a travel budget. But we would need to draft that and submit it, I assume, to the CPC, or maybe, yeah, probably to the CPC for like approval. I'm not really sure exactly what they want this to look like. Does anybody have any thoughts on what a budget request from this group should look like what process it should follow? Okay, well, I think we'll just table this then until folks have any other further thoughts that they might want to add. Because I'm not really sure how to proceed. Let me see if there's anything else open in the repository.
I think that at the last meeting, we decided, either last meeting or the meeting before that, that we decided that we would make a request for 2020 based on whatever we spent in 2019. And then we would review it again and annually or semi-annually. Is that, or am I misunderstanding the question? That is totally possible.
No, so I mean, I think the maybe we did. The problem that I was really specifically curious about here is like, okay, we can do that. We can say, hey, OpenJS Foundation board, you know how we spent X number of dollars, which I don't know what that figure is, on standards related travel in 2019. We propose to do it again in 2020. So the two problems are, we don't actually know what that number is because that number came from the old JS Foundation's budget. And number two, we don't know what the process for requesting funds from the board should look like, because now that we're like it should technically come from the CPC, right? Not from, like, we're not a formally chartered group yet.
So do we make a recommendation to the CPC in the meantime? That seems like we could do that.
Yeah.
But would it come exclusively from the old JS Foundation, or would it also come from Node.js Foundation?
Well,
Was there?
this time it would be the OpenJS Foundation, but it happened that in 2020, because we merged in 2020, that
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So like our numbers for last year are like, I think what you said is that they would come from the old JS Foundation, but I'm asking, wouldn't only part of them come from the old JS Foundation? Like, isn't there standards related travel for Node as well, or
I don't think so. I don't think Node
from
did.
last year?
I don't
They
think
didn't send
Node,
people to TC39 or anything?
no,
Oh, okay.
the people from Node who participated on behalf of their employers, and also
Right.
Node hats sometimes.
Right. Did we send anybody anywhere last year from OpenJS Foundation? Because
Well, people, if I recall correctly, we did have someone in New York,
okay.
and
Because I know in the past I have drawn on that for TPAC travel. But I did not last year, is the unique case.
yeah,
So unfortunately that like probably hurts the budgeting process, because you would like to say, well, there was budget for one person there at least, right?
yeah. So in 2019, the people we would have sent and would have paid for on behalf of the JS/OpenJS Foundation were yourself, Richard, and Maggie. And I don't believe
Okay.
we had anybody else that took anybody's spot. And I know Richard could correct me on his end if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's right. But I also think that all three of us chose not to tap foundation funds for that.
Oh, okay. So you didn't. Okay. So wow. All right.
For
So, yeah,
for
I'm
last
not
year,
used to
for
doing
last
that.
year specifically, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like last year, it seems like for whatever reason, like none of us used the budget last year. I mean, which is a good problem to have, right? Like if we had budget for 3 people and we didn't use it, like that yay, we saved some money. But it does mean that like basically our spend is zero, which makes it hard to justify that, let's say, to make a case that we should have some for next year.
Wait, Richard, for the New York one, you didn't use any funds for that?
Correct.
Is there, like, why?
Lack of process is a big thing, and then another was carryover from my normal operating model when it was the JS Foundation,
Mhm.
where at that time I would usually split it between employer and foundation.
Okay,
And
and
then,
so your employer covered some of your expenses this time?
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, so I think as far as the overall question, right? Like, it should be doable to come up with an estimate of what, you know, the range a delegate would need to cover, like, let's say for TC39, like 6 travels and lodgings a year, and then that should be the budget whether it was used or not. Like, if we're in a like the office kind of situation where we have to like spend money in order to get more money, there's a bunch of ways we can like retroactively spend money. But I like, that was like in this case of Richard's thing, like, his expenses could be like, we could just retroactively say he'd spent it, but like I'm assuming we're not in that sort of case where we have to jump through bureaucratic hoops.
Yeah, no, it was really just like we're still sort of formulating how the standards involvement will work and how we can get more people involved in standards and like what that will look like. So we need some initial budget for the first year, and basing it on last year was sort of like the initial idea, but seems that last year was a particular anomaly where we didn't actually send anybody anywhere on the foundation's budget.
I mean, it seems to me that we should just kind of say like that for one TC39 meeting, the travel budget is X, the lodging budget is X, and like do a similar process for whatever other standards meetings we'd need budget for, and then just kind of have standing instructions that if your employer is covering your expenses, then you should, then you should proactively take advantage of that. And if not, then here's the process to like list your expenses and, get reimbursed. And then like, it doesn't actually matter if it gets used or not. It's like, this is how much prepared to spend. Oh, sorry, but yeah, anyway, I don't.
No, that makes sense.
So I think there are a couple of other like process obstacles that the new foundation is actually trying to solve, because, previously the community's experience managing budget and expenses has just been through the travel fund, which is awesome, but also like the back end of that process was super messy. I don't know if anybody ever made use of it before, but they were passing around like a spreadsheet, and that was pretty much kind of a nightmare to mess with. So I know they want to be moving expenses, moving to use like Expensify, for example, to track some expenses, which would make, I think, some of the bureaucracy of it that Richard may have previously experienced a little easier too.
Yep.
So it sounds like what we're saying is we should, and I think that the biggest expense is those 6 TC39 meetings. If we were to ballpark, what that is for one person to attend, 6 meetings, what would y'all say that is? Like $1,000 a meeting?
I mean, you would have to average it out based on where the participant and the meetings are, I would assume, because like I have in the past attended meetings in the US where I think it cost me a grand total of like $600 or $700. But I think when we had our TPAC meeting in France, I think that was like $1,200 just for the flight.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know because
Like if we allocate like $300 to $50 for flights, and you know, any exceptions case by case, and then we allocate like, you know, and the standard thing you'd have at a company where you say like you can't, you know, not first class, right? Like it has to be like economy class or whatever. Like, and then like you do the same thing for lodging where you say like you can use a hotel or an Airbnb or whatever, but don't use a fancy, you know, use an affordable option, and like expect, and we pick some amount per night, you know, like 100 to 300 a night, and any exceptions are case by case, you know, and just kind of do that, and then we evaluate it over time, right? Like I think that
Yeah.
that like
I think
the upper limit amount not so high that it's going to be catastrophic if someone abuses it once and we have to pay them out. Like we'll just fix the budget after that.
Yeah, the other question that I have is like, does participation mean that you will attend all 6 meetings? Like,
I would say definitely not.
Yeah, I would think not. Like, I mean, even CSS working group, for example, meets 4 times a year. We go to a meeting if it is like, if you can go, basically. You can dial into almost all of those meetings. TPAC is one where you actually want to like physically be there if you can. So we try to always make sure we have somebody there for that.
I think that should be up to the judgment of whichever group, you know, person or group of people is participating with a given standards body, right? Like if they think it's important that they be there in person, great, the money should be there for that. And if not, great, the foundation has more money to spread around.
Okay, so how many people do we want to budget? 1 person? Is that the idea?
I feel like we should be able to make that call for each standards body or each venue, right? Like for TC39, and like 1 person to be physically there seems like a reasonable budget limit. Given that people can call in, it's just suboptimal, right?
Right.
But like maybe you'd need 3 people at, you know, a different venue, and like that should be okay.
Right. I mean, so that means basically for our AC meetings, we would need two budgets for W3C just to send me as the AC rep or whoever is the AC rep at the time. And then, yeah, for our standard stuff, we'll have to review in W3C what we think. And for TC39, I guess the question is how many people are we making, and is it for 6 meetings?
Yeah, so to repeat, I think it should be possible for 1 person to physically attend any of the 6 meetings or all of the 6 meetings. It should not be required that 1 person attend them all, and it's okay if different people alternate in and out.
Okay,
So, like,
that seems reasonable then to me. So we would like to ask for budget for 1 person at least to represent at every TC39 meeting.
Right. Not necessarily the same person, and if nobody can make it, that's fine. But like money shouldn't be the obstacle.
So
that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, when we think about the request, that makes sense to me. I'm wondering if there's ever a time when we would want more than 1 person at the same meeting. For TC39 particularly, but also for every other organization.
I think this is actually where my thing about let's look at last year as a starting point and then review again every 6 months, because like that is sort of the question, is like we sort of don't know on some of this stuff just yet how we're going to manage this. So
Well,
aiming
like
to get a budget for one person for each of those things to have full participation is a good goal for this year. And as we review further, we can plan to discuss whether we want the ability for 2 people sometimes, or even 3 people sometimes. Like I genuinely don't know.
well, and this happened 2 months ago, right? So like I'm re-employed now, but I was unemployed at the time. And what if Richard was not attending the New York meeting, I was going to like, file a reimbursement or whatever. I ended up going just and paying out of my own pocket. So like I think it's fine if we restrict it to only one person, but I also think that like these sorts of things are more complex than that the foundation needs a representative, right? Like each person is going to bring their own opinions and perspective. And I think it needs to be possible to be a judgment call when somebody wants to be there for whatever reasons, like, be there for a proposal or for something on the agenda or whatever. So in other words, I'm saying like starting out with one person is fine, but like it is important that we consider the possibility that more than one person would attend a given meeting when it's affordable.
Seems good.
So I mean, I think this is great, and I certainly don't view any of it as like problematic or objectionable. The question about it like stands that this group needs to put that request somewhere, like, and I think that it needs to go through the CPC. For the CPC to make the budget request. So I'm curious.
So we just have to provide our information recommendation to the CPC,
right? So we need basically somebody from this group to file an issue on the CPC repository saying the standards working group is proposing that we send one person to every TC39 meeting from the foundation next year with a total budgetary ask of X. And they're either going to say, great, we want to, like, we'll figure out how to ask that of the board, or they'll say something else. I don't know.
Does the CPC have a travel budget?
The CPC has a travel budget, which is historically been allocated for people from the Node project to travel to things like the Collab Summit or like NodeConf and things like that. So I think there's a proposal about how it should work moving forward, but I'm not sure if that's been adopted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked because I think it would be, we're thinking about it in terms of how many people, how many days, how many trips per year. And if that's also the case for the CPC, then aligning on that and then coming up with some, translating to dollars later rather than earlier would probably be a good thing. Because otherwise it looks too opaque. Mm-hmm. In my mind.
So are you suggesting then that the proposal to the CPC is allocate travel budget funds to send one person to these meetings for 2020?
If that is also how they're thinking about it, then yes. Okay. It would certainly be my preference. Like if we're starting from scratch, then it would be like, this many people, this many times per year, and the trips themselves are this many days long. Mm-hmm. Because that's, even in this conversation, we're not talking about $1,000. We're talking about at the meeting. So, but I'm not watching this equivalent changes on CPC side. So if they're not doing it that way, if it really is dollars and cents, then we should follow suit.
Well, does anybody want to volunteer to spark this conversation at the CPC level? And it's also a conversation we can have, we can start now and then hopefully have and finish in person for at the collab summit or something. I'm just noting that, you know, we're really getting towards the end of the year, and we're, other than kind of having a finer point and a finer sense of our goals in terms of attendance and that kind of stuff, we're not necessarily closer to the budget, having the budget to do it.
I mean, if we're in danger of not having any budget for next year, then like we can just quickly do a back of the napkin thing, right? If it's 300 a flight or sorry, 300 a night for lodging for 4 nights, and you know, 1,500 for flights at a max, we're talking about a max of $2,700 like total for flight and lodging per TC39 meeting. And if there's 6 of those, then we're talking about $16,200 max. You know, with the expectation it would likely be much less.
I apologize. I must not have been super clear. What we need is a proposal, or someone to champion a proposal with the CPC.
And like write up the document and all that stuff.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Because we can do that math and, you know, all that, but it's got to go somewhere. And unfortunately, you know, we don't necessarily, we don't have the authority to ask at this point as an unchartered group of standards concerned CPC individuals. We really need the CPC to be on board with this.
Should we also pursue chartering, or is it too soon for that?
So I think the idea was that we would get membership in alignment, and we would have a process defined for how someone participates in this group so that we could ask for chartering.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, I think this is something we could get ironed out definitely at the collab summit, where a lot of folks will be trying to work on stuff in person. But if we can start that conversation now, that would be ideal. I'll try, you know, to take this up. There's just with onboarding and a number of other things, this can't be my top priority, unfortunately. And perhaps Miles will be interested in championing it as well.
I'm happy to like help, but I definitely don't have room on my plate to champion it right now.
Okay, well, hopefully time will slow down, speed up. I don't know. Maybe that clone of myself I've been working on will finish before the end of the year, and we can get a little bit further on it.
Looks like there is a table for 2019 under the CPC proposal, which is currently at stage 3. So
Okay, so that's a good sign that it's at stage 3. I didn't actually know where it was.
I'll put a link in the notes doc.
Great. Okay. if that proposal is at stage 3, it means it's basically waiting on board approval, and that may just be the like just that they're finalizing the budget. Okay, we are at 10 till the top of the hour, and this has been a productive convo about the travel budget. Is there any other just sort of meta business or that kind of stuff? If not, I would love to hear. I think this is a little ad hoc and unscheduled, but Brian just got back from where you were at Chromium Dev Summit, yeah?
Chrome Dev Summit and BlinkOn. Yeah.
And BlinkOn, yeah. I wondered if you had anything exciting, you know, that to share from that. I don't know.
There's so many interesting things happening in webland. It's hard to really put your finger on any particular one. There was kind of really a lot of celebration of the increasing diversity of contributions. That was really cool, but also like reviewing the proposals. Microsoft is doing a lot of really amazing contributions to Chromium, which is really nice to see. But in terms of new things, there are, I think, some pretty interesting things that might be interesting to people in the foundation. I should probably type this up. I think that there's a web packaging proposal and a web shared libraries proposal that are both related. Packaging is probably further along, and shared libraries has been proposed in like a number of ways in the past. So this is not to be confused with standard library, but it is sort of similar. So it's basically like, can we find a way to do what is effectively like a shared cache of the big popular libraries, or somehow do it in a way that doesn't stomp on privacy protections. So I think the example case that is always discussed is Jquery, because Jquery was and still is, like, the latest HTTP archive report shows like 86% of the top 5 million sites still include Jquery. Like, how much are we spending in network time and all sorts of other aspects of like how you get to actually running code. So there was a nice presentation that should be available on the Chrome developers soon, that actually took and measured some of that. It's hard to really measure, but if you were somebody who just surf the web all day long, you might save like 10 gigabytes. It's pretty amazing. But it has a lot to work out. I don't know. I think there's a whole bunch of videos landing there. Maybe as they land, I can point to some of the more interesting ones that I think we have some alignment with. I ran into Miles there, which was really nice. So we got to chat a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to share, you know, some of those videos and this to like the projects list and stuff. Good idea.
Yeah. I also got to give my first BlinkOn Lightning talk. That was exciting. It's not really related to the foundation, but yay.
Yay, indeed. I'm sure you did great. Is that one recorded?
It should be recorded. It was lightning talk, so they're recorded.
Then you need to send that one around too.
Sure. Jory, did you have like other ideas that you were thinking I should talk about, and I'm just not hitting any of them, or?
No, I think it's nice, like when we go to these kinds of things that hit on the platform and hit on like these kinds of concerns that we talk about them, because that feels like what this group is for.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's a interesting thing with web packaging, and I don't know if there's really any overlap with 53, but the web packaging stuff, I'm dialing in tonight at 2 a.m. Eastern time or something like that to IETF meeting that is about packaging for embedded. So I don't know if there is some overlap in those two worlds or not. Maybe.
Well, that's the dark side of doing standard stuff, is dialing into meetings that are
In the middle of the night. Yeah. Well, with the first two Dini meetings were in Sydney, and they're, all day meetings for 5 days. And I had like my day job and dialed into every minute of all of those.
Ugh.
So I slept like 6 hours that week, I think.
Fun time.
But it was really exciting though.
All right.
Because we championed that, so that was huge. I think extensibility for CSS is amazing, I think.
Well, thank you for sharing your update from your recent travels.
Yeah, we'll type something up and send it to the list.
Cool. All right, well, we are right at the top of the hour. So unless there's other parting thoughts or comments, I'm gonna stop the stream here.